The distress signal, the research station Harmony's light, had been humanity's first glimpse into true galactic cooperation. Floating in the vast emptiness between star systems, the massive structure housed scientists from 17 different species, all working together to unlock the mysteries of dark matter. Dr. HFY, the station's Alterian commander, had often marveled at how peaceful their little corner of space had become. That peace shattered in an instant. "Commander, we have multiple contacts approaching at high velocity," announced the station's AI in its calm, mechanical voice. "Classification unknown. Estimate arrival in 4 minutes." HFY's blue-scaled hands moved quickly across his control panel. His species, the Alterians, were known throughout the galaxy for their scientific minds and cautious nature. What he saw on his screens made his stomach drop. 27 ships, each the size of a small moon, were bearing down on their position. The energy signatures were like nothing in any database. "Sound general alarm," he ordered. "All research teams to evacuation stations immediately." The station's corridors filled with beings of various shapes and sizes, all moving with the urgent panic of people who knew death was approaching. The Zenthari, with their elegant, bird-like features, were already loading their data cores into escape pods. The bulky core havens pushed through crowds with their massive frames, carrying smaller species to safety. The delicate whisper folk, beings of pure energy in crystalline bodies, were downloading themselves into portable containers. But not everyone was evacuating in the central laboratory. Dr. Zix9, a crystalline entity whose body looked like living diamond, was still working frantically at a research terminal. The creature's thoughts moved at the speed of light, but even that wasn't fast enough to save decades of research. "Dr. Zix9, you must evacuate now." HFY's voice came through the communication system. "Negative, Commander. The dark matter. Research cannot be lost. If these attackers are who I think they are, this knowledge may be the only thing that can stop them." HFY didn't have time to argue. The first impact shook the entire station. Through the massive viewing ports, he could see ships that defied understanding. They were black as space itself, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Weapons that fired pure destruction began tearing apart the station's outer sections. The evacuation proceeded with desperate efficiency. Ship after ship launched from the station's docking bays, carrying refugees to safety. The Alterian science vessels were first to leave, followed by the swift Zenthari scouts. The massive core haven transports took longer to launch, but carried hundreds of beings to safety. Within 30 minutes, the station was nearly empty. Only a skeleton crew remained, led by HFY and Dr. Zix9. The attackers had identified themselves through their actions rather than words. These were the Void Swarm, an ancient mechanical race that consumed entire civilizations, converting all matter into more of their own kind. HFY sent out distress signals on all frequencies, but he knew it was probably hopeless. They were too far from any major shipping routes. The nearest military base was 4 days away at maximum speed. By then, the station would be nothing but raw materials for the Void Swarm's endless expansion. 300 light-years away, Captain Alina Vasquez was having a very different kind of day. Her ship, the UES Thunderstrike, was on routine patrol along the edge of human space. It was boring work, the kind that made career military officers dream of retirement. Alina was checking supply reports when her communications officer, Lieutenant Bark, called out from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. Very faint signal, but it's definitely a distress call." Alina looked up from her tablet. Lieutenant Sarah Park was good at her job. If she said something was worth attention, it usually was. What kind of signal? Multi-frequency burst, using about 6 different alien languages. It's weak, probably, because of distance, but the computer is translating parts of it. Something about a research station under attack. Alina stood up and walked over to Park's station. The Thunderstrike was not a large ship by military standards. It was a Wolverine-class patrol cruiser, designed for speed and endurance rather than heavy combat. Her crew of 68 was good, but they were not equipped for major battles. Where's it coming from? That's the problem, Captain. The signal is coming from outside our patrol area. Way outside. If we responded, we'd be abandoning our assigned route. Alina studied the star charts. The signal was coming from a region of space that was technically neutral territory. More importantly, it was coming from an area where humans had no official responsibilities. Every regulation in the book said they should log the signal and pass it on to the appropriate authorities. But Alina Vasquez had not joined the United Earth Space Force to follow regulations when people were dying. Mr. Chen, she called to her first officer, "What's our engine status?" Commander David Chen looked up from his engineering reports. He had served with Alina for 3 years and knew that tone in her voice. "Engines are green across the board, Captain. We could make maximum burn for about 6 hours without overheating. Communications, try to clean up that signal. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." Lieutenant Park worked at her station for several minutes, filtering out static and background noise. Slowly, voices became clear. They were speaking in the Alterian language, but the ship's computer translated in massive fleet of unknown HOSTILES, station defenses overwhelmed, requesting immediate assistance, casualties mounting, there, converting our dead into more of themselves. The bridge fell silent. Every human on the ship understood the implications. Somewhere out there, people were dying, and their own dead were being turned into enemies. Captain Commander Chen said quietly, "If we leave our patrol route without authorization, I know what it means, David." Alina looked at the star charts again. "But I also know what it means if we don't go." She activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress signal from a research station under attack by hostile forces. We are changing course to render assistance. I know this isn't what we signed up for when we left port, but somebody out there needs help, and we're the only ones close enough to matter. All departments, prepare for possible combat operations." The Thunderstrike changed course and accelerated toward the source of the distress signal. It would take them 18 hours to reach the station at maximum speed. Back at Harmony's Light, the situation was becoming desperate. The Void Swarm had surrounded the station completely. Their ships were not just attacking, they were systematically harvesting the station's materials. Sections that had been destroyed were being consumed by mechanical creatures that crawled across the hull like metal insects. Dr. Zixnine had made a disturbing discovery. "Commander, I have analyzed the attackers' technology. These are definitely Void Swarm units, but they are not operating according to their usual patterns." Kethfar, who was coordinating the station's few remaining defensive systems, looked up from his console. "What do you mean?" "The Void Swarm typically consumes everything in a system before moving on. But they have been ignoring the evacuation ships. They could have easily destroyed the fleeing vessels, but they let them go. They want something specific from this station. The dark matter research. That would be my conclusion. The question is why an ancient machine race would want theoretical physics data. Their conversation was interrupted by another massive impact. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated, and several lights went out. They were running out of time. 18 hours later, the thunderstrike dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. What Captain Vasquez saw on her screens made her blood run cold. The research station was still there, but it was surrounded by more enemy ships than she had ever seen in one place. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park. "There must be 50 of them." Alina looked at the tactical display. Each of the enemy ships was at least 10 times the size of the Thunderstrike. In any reasonable military assessment, this was a suicide mission. "Captain," Commander Chen said, "we should call for reinforcements. Admiral Rodriguez could have a battle group here in 2 days." Alina considered the option. Admiral Rodriguez commanded the nearest human fleet base, and he had the firepower to deal with this situation. But the people on that station didn't have 2 days. "Open a channel to the station," she ordered. The signal was weak, but Dr. Kethvar's voice came through clearly. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Kethvar of the research station Harmony's Light. Please identify yourself." "Commander, this is Captain Alina Vasquez of the United Earth ship Thunderstrike. We received your distress signal. What is your situation?" There was a long pause. When Kethvar spoke again, his voice was filled with amazement. "Captain Vasquez, you are human. That's correct. You traveled all this way to help us. But why? This station is not in human territory. You have no obligation to us." Alina looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were scared, but they were ready. This was what they had trained for, even if they had never expected to face odds like this. "Commander, we don't need an obligation to help people in trouble. That's just what humans do." Another pause, then Dr. Zix9's crystallines joined the conversation. "Captain, I am Dr. Zix9, the station's senior researcher. You must understand, the forces attacking us are called the Void Swarm. They are an ancient mechanical race that converts organic matter into more of themselves. Your ship alone cannot stand against them." "Maybe not," Alina admitted, "but we're going to try. And we won't be alone for long." She switched to the ship's internal communication system. "Communications, send a priority message to Admiral Rodriguez. Tell him we have a Void Swarm incursion and need immediate reinforcement. Include all tactical data." Then she opened a channel to the entire human fleet network. It was against regulations to call for help on open frequencies, but Alina was already breaking so many rules that one more didn't matter. "This is Captain Alina Vasquez of the Thunderstrike to any human vessels in range. We have a civilian research station under attack by hostile forces. The station contains non-human civilians who will be killed if we don't act. I'm requesting immediate assistance from any ship that can reach these coordinates." The responses came quickly. Captain Torres of the cargo hauler Magellan was 3 hours away and armed with nothing but point defense systems. But he was coming. The mining ship Prospector's Dream was 5 hours out and carried industrial equipment that could be weaponized. Even the civilian transport, New Horizon, carrying families to a colony world, changed course to help. Alina looked at the tactical display again. In 6 hours, there would be 12 human ships in the system. They would still be outnumbered 5-1 by an enemy with superior technology, but those were better odds than they had now. "Mr. Chen, take us in." but keep us at maximum range for our weapons. We need to buy time for the cavalry to arrive. The Thunderstrike moved toward the research station, its weapons powering up. On the station, Dr. Kethvar watched the human ship approaching and felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his long life, he was seeing someone risk everything for strangers. "Dr. Zixnine," he said quietly, "I think we may have misjudged the humans." The human response, the first shot fired by the Thunderstrike, was more symbolic than effective. Captain Vasquez knew her ship's weapons couldn't seriously damage the massive Void Swarm vessels, but she needed to get their attention away from the research station. The plasma cannon bolt struck the nearest enemy ship and scattered harmlessly across its hull. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 of the Void Swarm ships turned toward the Thunderstrike and began approaching at attack speed. Their weapons, which looked like crystalline formations along their hulls, began to glow with deadly energy. "Evasive maneuvers," Alina ordered. "Make us a hard target to hit." Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the ship's pilot, was one of the best in the human fleet. He threw the Thunderstrike into a spiral pattern that would have made most alien crews unconscious from the gravitational stress. But humans had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them, and their bodies could handle acceleration that would crush most other species. The first enemy, Salvo, missed by less than 50 meters. The second came closer. Alina knew they couldn't keep dodging forever. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Park from communications, "I'm getting responses to our distress call. Captain Torres on the Magellan will be here in 2 hours. The prospectors. Dream is 3 hours out. Any word from Admiral Rodriguez?" "He's coming with Battle Group 7, 8 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts. But they won't be here for 18 hours. Alina did the math. The research station was already heavily damaged. It couldn't survive 18 more hours of attack. They needed to do something now with what they had. She opened a channel to the station. "Commander Kethvar, can you evacuate your remaining personnel?" "Negative, Captain. Our evacuation pods were destroyed in the first attack, and Dr. Zix refuses to leave without the research data." Alina looked at her tactical display. The 3 enemy ships pursuing them were getting closer. Behind them, the rest of the Void Swarm fleet was systematically tearing apart the research station. "Mr. Chen, I need options." Her first officer had been working at his station, analyzing the enemy ships with every sensor they had. "Captain, I've found something interesting. The Void Swarm ships are incredibly powerful, but they're also incredibly old. Their technology is based on principles we don't entirely understand, but their tactical systems are predictable. They expect their enemies to fight logically." "What do you mean?" "They expect us to retreat when we're outnumbered. They expect us to preserve our ship when faced with overwhelming odds. They expect us to act rationally." Alina smiled grimly. "Then let's show them what humans do when we don't act rationally." She activated the ship's general communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to do something that goes against every rule of space combat. We're going to ram one of these ships." The bridge fell silent. Commander Chen stared at her. "Captain, that's suicide." "Maybe, but it might also be the only way to save those people. Mr. Morrison, I want you to plot a collision course with the lead enemy ship. Full power to engines and forward shields." On the research station, Dr. Kethvar watched in amazement as the small human ship suddenly accelerated directly toward one of the massive Void Swarm vessels. "What are they doing? That's certain death." Dr. Zixnine's crystalline form pulsed with confused colors. I believe they are attempting a ramming attack, but the mass differential makes success impossible. Their ship will be destroyed on impact, unless... Kethvar's eyes widened as he understood. They're not trying to destroy the ship. They're trying to damage it enough to change the tactical situation. The thunderstrike struck the Void Swarm vessel at 17% of the speed of light. The human ship's reinforced hull, designed to survive asteroid impacts, penetrated deep into the enemy vessel before the forward sections were completely destroyed. The explosion that followed lit up space for thousands of kilometers. When the light faded, the Void Swarm ship was still there, but it was no longer functional. Its crystalline weapons had gone dark, and it was drifting powerless through space. The thunderstrike was gone, but her crew had escaped in the final seconds before impact. Their life pods were scattered across the battlefield, but their sacrifice had achieved something no one thought possible. They had proven that the Void Swarm could be hurt. Emergency signal from the life pods, Dr. Zix9 announced. The human crew survived, but their captain is badly injured. Before Kethvar could respond, space around the research station began to shimmer. Ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. The cargo hauler Magellan arrived first, followed by the mining vessel Prospector's Dream. Then came ships that had no business being in a war zone. The passenger transport New Horizon, the scientific survey ship Darwin's Quest, even a luxury yacht called Sunset Dreams. Within an hour, 23 human ships had arrived in the system. None of them were military vessels, except for the destroyed Thunderstrike. They were cargo haulers, mining ships, transports, and civilian craft. But they all came armed with one thing the Void Swarm had never encountered: human stubbornness. Captain Rosa Torres of the Magellan took command of the makeshift fleet. She was a cargo pilot by trade, but like all human ship captains, she had military training. All vessels, this is Torres. We're going to coordinate our attacks to maximize damage while minimizing losses. The human fleet attacked in ways that defied military logic. Cargo ships used their loading equipment as improvised weapons. Mining vessels deployed asteroid breakers as bombs. The passenger transport New Horizon actually rammed a smaller Void Swarm ship. Her captain announcing over the radio, "Tell my passengers, this is why we practice emergency procedures." Dr. Zix9 watched the battle from the research station's sensors and realized something profound was happening. "Commander, the human tactical approach is completely illogical by our standards, but it's working." How is it working? The Void Swarm operates on predictive algorithms. They calculate the most likely response to their attacks and prepare countermeasures. But the humans are not responding logically. They are using tactics that should result in their own destruction. But their willingness to sacrifice themselves is creating opportunities that shouldn't exist. On the battlefield, Captain Torres was coordinating attacks that would have horrified any military academy instructor. Ships were ramming enemies they couldn't possibly defeat. Crews were abandoning their vessels to board enemy ships with nothing but handheld weapons. The mining ship captain actually used his ship's ore processor to literally eat through a Void Swarm hull. But the most remarkable thing was happening in the life pods scattered around the battlefield. Captain Elena Vasquez, despite her injuries, was still issuing orders from her emergency pod. She had turned her escape craft into a command center, coordinating rescue operations for other human crews, while simultaneously planning the next phase of the attack. Captain Torres Elena's weak voice came over the communication system. "The research station still has 30 people aboard. We need to evacuate them before those ships break through the station's hull." "Copy that, Captain Vasquez." Darwin's Quest is moving to dock with the station now. The scientific survey ship Darwin's Quest was not designed for combat evacuations, but her captain, Dr. Maria Santos, had volunteered for the most dangerous job. She brought her ship alongside the research station while void swarm weapons fired all around them. Commander Kethvar led the evacuation personally. As he helped Dr. Zix9 into the human ship, he found himself face to face with Dr. Santos. "Commander," she said, "we're going to get you all to safety." "Dr. Santos, why are your people doing this? We are strangers to you. Our species has no alliance with humanity." Dr. Santos paused in her work, helping evacuees aboard. "Commander, where I come from, there's an old saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We may be strangers, but you're still people, and what's happening to you is still evil." As the evacuation continued, the tide of battle was slowly turning. The human fleet had lost 7 ships, but they had destroyed or disabled 12 void swarm vessels. More importantly, they had disrupted the enemy's systematic consumption of the research station. Then, space around the battle zone lit up with the bright flashes of ships dropping out of hyperspace. Admiral Chen Rodriguez had arrived with battle. Group 7, the Admiral's first communication, was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the United Earth Space Force. I see we have a situation here." Captain Torres responded immediately. "Admiral, we have civilian evacuations in progress and multiple human ships engaged with hostile forces." "I can see that, Captain. I can also see that you've been doing one hell of a job without us." The Admiral's voice carried a mixture of pride and amazement. "All civilian vessels, please clear the combat zone. Battle Group 7 will take it from here." But the civilian captains had other ideas. Captain Torres spoke for all of them. "Respectfully, Admiral, we started this fight. We'd like to finish it." The final battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Human military vessels fought alongside cargo ships and passenger transports. Mining vessels used their industrial equipment as weapons, while luxury yachts served as rescue craft. The void swarm, faced with tactics they couldn't predict and enemies who refused to behave logically, began to retreat. Dr. Zix9, now safely aboard the Darwin's Quest, observed the battle's conclusion with growing understanding. "Commander Kethvar, I believe we have witnessed something unique in galactic history." "What do you mean?" "Most species, when faced with overwhelming odds, will calculate the probability of success and act accordingly. They will retreat, surrender, or negotiate when the odds are against them. But humans seem to operate on different principles." Kethvar watched as a human cargo ship, its hull breached and its engines failing, used its last power to ram an enemy vessel twice its size. "They don't calculate odds the same way we do." "Exactly. They ask a different question. Instead of, 'Can we win?' they ask, 'Is this worth fighting for?' And once they decide the answer is yes, the odds become irrelevant." When the battle ended, the Void Swarm fleet was in full retreat. The research station was saved, though heavily damaged. More importantly, every single being who had been aboard the station was alive and safe. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and damage assessment teams catalogued the destruction, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The story was always the same. A small human patrol ship had heard a distress call from strangers and had risked everything to help. When that ship was destroyed, more humans had come. When they were outnumbered 50-1, they had fought anyway. Dr. Kethvar, now recovered from his ordeal, sent a message to the Alterian Science Council. We have encountered a species unlike any other in the galaxy. The humans call their world a death world because of its harsh conditions. But I believe their planet made them into something more than survivors. It made them into beings who will risk everything to protect others, even strangers. Captain Elena Vasquez, recovering in a medical bay aboard Admiral Rodriguez's flagship, received a communication from the Galactic Research Council. They wanted to offer humanity full membership in their organization and access to all their research facilities. That's a generous offer, Elena told the council representative. But you should know that if you partner with humans, we're going to expect you to help us when other people are in trouble. The representative, a being whose species had been part of galactic civilization for thousands of years, paused thoughtfully. Captain, after what we have witnessed, I believe that is exactly what we need. 6 months later, human ships were a common sight throughout the galaxy. They served as escorts for research vessels, responded to distress calls in remote systems, and somehow always seemed to appear when trouble was brewing. Other species began to understand that partnering with humans meant never having to face danger alone. The research station Harmony's Light was rebuilt, bigger and better than before. Dr. Zixnine continued the dark matter research, but now worked alongside human scientists who brought their own unique perspectives to the project. Commander Kethvar, now promoted to Director of Interspecies Cooperation, often looked out at the human ships stationed near the facility and smiled. The galaxy had learned something important when humans heard someone calling for help. They didn't calculate odds or consider obligations. They simply came, ready to fight, ready to sacrifice, and ready to prove that some things were worth any risk. The Void Swarm retreated to the outer rim of the galaxy. Their expansion halted for the first time in millennia. They had learned something. 2. There were beings in the universe who could not be calculated, predicted, or understood through logic alone. There were beings who would stand against any odds for complete strangers. They called them humans, and the galaxy would never be the same